Test. All right. I think we're live. I think we're live. Yeah. Okay. Just move this over there. All right. Okay, so today, what are we doing today? Okay, so today I want to look at the expressobits version of Steam Multiplayer Peer, right? So if you're not familiar, Steam Multiplayer Peer was an extension developed to allow Godot multiplayer developers to reuse use the multiplayer synchronizer RPCs in Spawner without having to interface with the lower level Steam APIs. Like for example, if this Steam API here, which is provided by Godot Steam's plugin or extension, however you want to call it, it basically is a one-to-one mapping for all Steam APIs that you can imagine. So you can access the networks and the relay servers and that sort of thing, and be able to have communications, P2P communications for your game. And you would have to do some manual coding for that. Well, the Steam Multiplayer Peer comes along and you're able to use like the multiplayer synchronizer and RPCs and that sort of thing without having to deal with those lower level Steam APIs. So it's a nice way to be able to switch between eNet for local testing, and then once you're ready to test on Steam, you don't really have to change, or you shouldn't have to change your multiplayer code. It should just work. And if you've watched one of my recent interviews with Pondersoft for the game Bubble Battle, this is exactly what he did. So he wrote his game and he used NetFox for lag compensation, and then he used this Steam Multiplayer Peer plugin, and he's able to test locally with eNet. And then once he's ready to test using Steam, or anybody's ready to test using Steam, you can just connect to Steam as you normally would, and then you don't have to rewrite your code. So that's the beauty of Steam Multiplayer Peer. I have some deep dive videos on those and how to set them up that I made about a year ago now, and they've made a few updates over the past year, but there is still this big outstanding issue here, which I don't have ready. What did I do with it? Here we go. All right, so this issue was created back at the end of 2023. So right around 2024, we have this issue reported here that basically explains that you can't use create host or join host on a Mac. It just fails. So unfortunately, it's still like that today. Nobody's been able to resolve this 100%. And you could see there's some back and forth. 24. Wow, there was a lot of dialogue on here. So yeah, everybody's just kind of throwing darts at nothing really. And I don't think anybody was really able to make any progress over the past, I don't know, year and a half or whatever it's been. Yeah, about year and a half. So here we are today, and what's funny about this is if you look at my commit history, so this Godot Steam Multiplayer Peer extension project that I have was my version or my demo project that I did to illustrate how to use Steam Multiplayer, or how to use Steam and use their relay functionality with an extension. So this is not so there's another version of Steam Multiplayer Peer, which is a pre-compiled version of Godot that the folks over at Godot Steam manage, but now you're using a whole different version of Godot that basically mirrors the official version, but they brought in their own APIs and stuff so that you have that out of the box. So this is not that version. So what I'm using here is not that version. This is just a normal Godot build and with this extension installed. I think I have the extension just so everybody can see it. This is the extension right here. I don't know why it changed away so quickly. All right. Where was I? Okay, so this was my demo project that I made about a year ago that demonstrates how to use this extension. And during that tutorial, which you can see here,
this is by far
yeah, whatever. I believe I talked about, let me see if there's some limitations. I think at the network issues, maybe towards the end, I think I talk about the limitations on the Mac operating system or Mac OS operating systems. And like I said a minute ago, unfortunately, that still exists. However, if we look at what's funny about this is I did this exactly about a year ago. So you can see these last couple commits here at the end of May and then early June added support for Steam multiplayer peer extension. So this is almost at exactly a year to the day that I added this functionality. So I've been meaning to get to this, and I just got to it about the end of last week. And I really wanted to solve this because I develop on a Mac. I prefer that. So I really wanted to try to get this working on a Mac, as I've never been able to run these tests, you know, on Godot. Where was that game here? Let's look. This is actually that repository we were looking at. So I was never actually able to run this. I could click use Steam, and that's going to use the Steam APIs, which is Godot Steam, which works fine. But I could never actually host a game successfully and you know, show that P2P, and you can't run two Steam clients on the same computer. So I'd have, you know, one on my Mac and one on my PC, but I never could do that. So I had to use a really old PC that I had laying around and my PC to actually test this. So that's kind of annoying because I wanted this to work on a Mac. So it looks like over the past few months, this developer named Garbage Mule kind of got wind of this back in March, I think, or yeah, somewhere around March, and they started looking into this. I think he created a demo project from scratch and was looking at, you know, this extension is written in C++, so this is like a lower level GD extension proper, not a GD script level extension. So you're working with C++ APIs, the Steam APIs, and then you have to compile it, and then you bring those compiled libraries back over to your Godot project. And I think he built like a really dumbed down version of a project, stripped it down, and really wasn't able to get it working. And so I finally got a minute to work on this. So I contacted him and I was like, hey, I'm about to, you know, work on this. Do you have any advice on how to set this up? And he pointed me, I think it was probably about 10 minutes of work. It took me about an hour to get the C++ project up and running and building, and then showing that I could copy the exported library file over to the Godot project over, like, you can, I don't know if you can see it, my face might be in the way. Let me just pull this project over really quick. Oops. So if you look down here in this add-ons folder, Steam Multiplayer Peer has a folder called Mac OS. You can't see it in the editor, but there are libraries in there. If I open this in a file manager, yeah, you can see that. Oh, I already have it open. Yeah. So this is the same folder, and here's the library that, you know, we build, that the editor, I believe, uses, because if you delete this, it doesn't work. So you build in C++, and then you copy that library over here, and Garbage Mule was actually able to point me in the right direction. So it was about an hour overall, but it was probably just 10 minutes of work because I was being very methodical. I didn't want to make a mistake trying to set up the environment. And one of the things I thought was interesting is I was like, how did you figure out how to do this? And there's a documentation page. What? This feels old. I guess it's not. It's still 4.4. Okay. So compiling for Mac OS, this applies to plugins and extensions, and I think there's even a extension getting started page and a whole chapter on GD extensions. And you know, I read through all this to try to get an idea. So I needed Python, which I had already. The Mac comes with it, and this scons is a Python-based, I think, build system that allows you to build these C++ libraries, which Godot heavily uses, and of course Xcode, which is just Mac's built-in. You still have to download it, C++, and it's how you make your iPhone apps and all that stuff. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and this Vulkan SDK. So I had to get all these up and running, and I don't remember if I used Homebrew or not to install. I think I did, to install scons or whatever you call that. And then you just run like scons platform and it compiles. So he walked me through that, and he said he went over to the actions, which is where these GD extensions get built. It's kind of like a continuous integration thing. And you can actually step through, or you can look through all the steps here in this actions tab for the build, right? I just like clicked on one of the builds here for the Mac, and you can find like which version of Steam they use. I think they were using 1.6.0, and I think the latest is 1.6.2. And that was one of the things we looked at, was like, was there a difference in versions or whatever? So you can see exactly what they're doing to build this project, to build this extension. And because there isn't really explicit documentation in the extension, but you can also check out this build YAML file, which that actions uses to do that continuous deployment or continuous integration. And you can see there's like the platform. He's building a universal flag, and if you're paying attention, that's going to be like something like the architecture. Instead of x86, it's universal. And ARM is for Apple Silicon, and this is for the old Intel based ones, but universal I think will build for both. So that's what they're doing. And you can kind of follow along here and see a little bit. Okay, they're checking out whatever the repository, I don't know if this is the C++ repository for Godot, because you have to have that at least pulled down as part to like build off of it. And I'm not going to go through that process today of how to set this up. I think there's enough out there, and if you do want to do it and you're having trouble getting it, yeah, let me know if you want a tutorial on that. I think I can totally do that. I have some pretty good instructions based on this experience, but just looking into this build YAML, you're able to kind of see what they're doing. They're copying over these two SDK files, which are the public folder and the redistributable bin. Those are the two Steamwork APIs that you need. I don't think I have a folder with that open. I did a minute ago. Hold on a second. See if I can find it really quick. Workspace. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so right here, this is the Steamworks SDK. You can download that very easily. It's very easy to Google and find the list of SDK versions. And I tried 160, and then I just grabbed the latest. And I think you go over to the public and you just copy this folder, and then you're able to build against that SDK, and then you're able to build your extension. So with some help, the point is we were able to sort it out using this, build YAML that kind of, it does tell you what they're doing. It's just a little hard to read. And then this actions build tab here will show you exactly kind of what they're doing. And you don't have to do everything. It's not a one-to-one thing. There's some steps you don't have to do, but I think this was pretty helpful to just kind of go through this to get it up and running. And I definitely recommend checking out if you're interested in building the extensions, downloading the Godot source, and because you kind of need that to build this stuff, and also review these GD extension sections here under the docs. They give you a pretty much overview of what the libraries mean, and also dependencies, and make sure you read the big warning signs, especially if you're on a Mac. That's going to be really helpful for builds. Anyways, so I met up with Garbage Mule, and I got to, every time I say his username, I just crack up. We got together, and he helped me. He had basically just gone through this, so he was on standby, and I was just kind of asking questions. We were chatting on Discord, and we were able to get this building fairly quickly. And I think I've got a window open. Yeah, so here's my Steam multiplayer peer playground, as I called it. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, so we're at the just base level of that project, and here's my build command that I've been running, and we're gonna do a template debug and universal, and yeah, let's just watch it build really quick. Because I didn't change anything, it was done. But that was pretty exciting. So as part of trying to figure out where the hell this Steam multiplayer peer extension is crashing on a Mac, I thought, well, it's got to be a bug. Maybe let's just start with the extension itself. So that's why I wanted to get it up and running. And where was it? Which one is it here? Nope, that's not it. Yeah, so it's a Visual Studio Code project, C++ project. I've had brief C++ experience over the course of my career, so I had to kind of dust off a little bit of that. But right here, here's the culprit. Here's create host. So if we go back to our Godot project, which, yeah, let's not look at that one. Let's look at this one. Okay, so this is a Godot project that I created just to test this, and this is the only script file, right? Yeah, this is the only script file in this whole project. And if we run it, it just says host and host no Godot Steam. You can ignore this host no Godot Steam, but host basically just tries to init Steam. You create a lobby callback, you create a lobby, and then once the lobby is created, we set some data, and then it'll hit create host, which is just a local method right here, and then we'll create our Steam multiplayer peer, and this is where everything breaks. I actually think it's working right now because I think I fixed it. Yeah, so it's actually correctly working right now because of a workaround that I'll touch on in a second. But if you click that, here, let's actually break it. Let me go back to boop. Let's break it, which is not, am I in the right project? Yes. Oh yeah, here, let's get rid of this. Actually, let me do it from terminal. So kind of spoiler alert here, so don't pay too close attention to that. Okay, so let's put this back. I just made a backup copy. Okay, so this is the extension downloaded from the asset library tab without any adjustments. I don't think I created any builds today with it. So if we run it now, it should break. Yeah, error creating. Can you guys see that? Yes, you can see that. It's a little hard to see, but anyways, so I have error creating host. This is the error that was that we found over the issue. This was like kind of the original issue. I think they were getting 20 or 25. I don't know if that. I don't think this is a separate issue. If it is, whoops, I don't know. I just don't think it was ever working on a Mac. So that's kind of where we were with it. And this error 2 just kind of means unavailable. We don't really have access to anything from the Godot context. It's just the APIs, the documentation. So this create host fails or create client fails. So to try to debug that, like I said a second ago, we set up the C++ extension project, and it's bombing right here. So Steam networking sockets is null. That's the problem right now. Is this is null. So I just put this print statement in there so I can see, and which is cool because if you click the debugger, let me see if I thought, oh, maybe I'm not. Yeah, so I don't have a build right now. So what was cool about here, let's just do that. Sorry, I'm all over the place right now. So if we create a build, I didn't change anything, so it shouldn't change anything. Okay, and I need to figure out where those builds are. Where did I put them? I think it's right here. Repos. I think this was the project. No, it is not. Where did I put it? Maybe it is back under here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so when you do that build over in the C++, or in the terminal window here, that compiles the C++ project, and based on the properties or parameters, the build parameters you supplied, you get this dylib. I guess that's just Mac's kind of package executable for libraries. And what you want to do is once you build that, you just copy it over to for testing purposes, you just copy it over here and replace the one that comes with it. So let's just do that. And did it give me, yeah, so I'm going to replace. It gave me a pop-up to say, do you want to replace that? So yeah, I want to replace that. So now if we come back in here, let's check the logs really quick. There's nothing in the debugger tab, just some, oh, you're not using Delta, whatever, and then error creating host. But if you look at my C++ code, I added this print statement here. This was not here in the code. So if we run that, where did it go? So I've got like 50 windows open. So if we run it again, we get the same error. However, we get another debug statement, and look at that. That's our C++ debug statement. That wasn't there, right? The previous run. So that's cool. So I knew that my C++ code was correctly compiling, and I was able to create a library and add changes to it. And that was like step one. And that, that took about an hour or so to get to this point with the help of Garbage Mule. Yeah, like I don't think it would have been that quick if I didn't have him there kind of helping me with that. So big shout out to him. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I think what we did was we were basically like, well, why is this null? It doesn't make any sense. Like, we're initting Steam. Like, let's look at our Godot project. Let me stop it. We're initting Steam here. We have the APIs loaded, or through the the Steam libraries loaded. Like, why is this null? Why is this sockets null? And that was the big question. And I believe Garbage Mule came to the same conclusion. It was just kind of like, well, Steam isn't getting initted. If you look through this project, this Steam multiplayer peer extension, nowhere in this code. I mean, there's only like a handful of files. I mean, don't let this intimidate you. Like, this is just the outline that's going to make things busy. This is the SDK that we added in the beginning, so we don't need to see that, and we don't need to see all this other stuff. This is just Godot C++ was a module that gets pulled down as part of this extension, like a sub module, and that was really important to get this build to work. So if you are paying attention, you're trying to do something like this, you do need to make sure you get your C++ sub module pulled in so that it can build against those SDKs. Anyways, tangent. Here's just the files. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 files or whatever, and your entry point into this whole extension is right here, Steam multiplayer peer. And I started here because I was like, well, maybe the initialization is wrong. And you could see I was screwing around, or I was experimenting, I should say, with changing it to, I think I was matching the documentation, was using this runtime stuff. And I didn't really know what I was doing here. I was kind of guessing and checking, and I don't like doing that, but I was desperate, and I was like, this looks easy enough. I know the C++ compiler is working, or that process. So I took a stab at trying to get it working at this level, and maybe these classes weren't getting set up correctly, and it took a minute to figure that out, where this entry point was, by the way, and I believe it's right here. So if you check the .gd extension, it's right here. That's your entry point, entry symbol, pretty straightforward. Cool. So I kind of ruled out that it was an issue with initialization, like maybe this wasn't getting called. It was definitely getting called. I had some warning things I printed out here and was able to confirm that. Also, if you comment this out and try to compile and then bring it over into the Godot project, it'll no longer recognize these files, which you have to use in the Godot project. Steam multiplayer peer, this class you're registering so that you can use it here. So that's cool. I don't know if this is the exact place where that registration occurs. I think it is. With C++, there's an annoying, I'm going to say, amount of configuration that you have to do to get one thing working. And again, like, it's been years since I worked in C++ regularly. So as a tangent, I added this init Steam API, which in order to get this function to recognize, I had to add it down here to this class DB, to this bind method. Can't get it to not show pop-ups right there. And then you also have to add it to the header file somewhere. And again, this is kind of, I didn't really remember this stuff. I just had to kind of figure it out. And yeah, so those are like the three places you have to add a function to actually add a function to use. And then let's go back to the area right here. Yeah, so simultaneously, I think Garbage Mule and I both knew that this would be a init Steam issue, and so we both added this Steam init function. I say we both did because I didn't actually know we did that. I think we were working independently about it, and yeah, so I added this init Steam function because I figured, well, this is null and it's returning, hey, you didn't initialize this. That's well, it was returning null, right? So I figured it's not being initialized. So here's our Steam init APIs, which are provided because we have access to the Steam APIs right here as part of the C++ project. So I'm able to access it and figured out how to get the result out. And I know this is really ugly, but I couldn't figure out how to just print an enum in C++. And it was just easier for me to just do an if statement and check. And if it's a version mismatch, and I'll get to that in a minute, that just print out this warning. Otherwise, just give me the actual error message. And the error message, when you run this, well, you don't get an error message, right? It just runs successfully. And if I show you what I'm talking about, you're probably like, what are you talking about? If we come down here, yeah, actually right here, I already have it as a test. Remember, this is a test project. It's not a real project, just to demonstrate, just to try to get this line of code to work. And I thought, well, if we create the Steam multiplayer peer and we call this new function that we have here, great. We're going to have Godot Steam initialized, and then we're going to have our Steam multiplayer peer Steam initialized. Does that make sense? Sure. And that should allow us to call this create host function, which, let me bring this over here, which should allow this this guy right here. Where is it? This will get called, and it'll allow this guy right here to not be null in theory, right? Okay, so what we did is if you actually run a Steam init and then you run another Steam init, it doesn't like that. And I'm still not 100% on why, but my guess was that this is I'm kind of shortcutting a lot of work. From the point that we created this init Steam function to test, to enable that to actually figuring out what we think the current issue is, it took about a day. So I'm kind of shortcutting a little bit here, but the idea was if we initialize this and we initialize this like up here, it threw another new exception, and it was something like, I think I documented it over here. What was it? Where was it? Yeah, so I basically, what I'm describing right now on stream was what I posted here a couple days ago. And I think I said, where was it? Yeah, right here. So create host is, yeah, so when you actually ran the create host function, it said no Steam user 023. And then when you, and then it returned a status code. And I didn't know that right away. Like, I didn't know that this Steam API actually returned a status. Like, I didn't have this part right there. So once I figured that out, I think I just found somebody else using it. Or if you actually click on this and you look through their example code, I mean, this is just all, investigation work. Where is it? Right here. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. So we can just get the result by doing a check on the init, init return value. Great. So now that we know that we can get that, I needed to, I don't know how I figured out which mismatch version. I think maybe I just printed out. I really don't remember how I got that, but at some point I was able to get the version or the actual error that came back. Because usually this is supposed to come back as, where is it? Is it in, yeah, right. I just keep passing it right here. Usually it's supposed to give you a result okay, but it was giving me this version mismatch. Along with that, no user found Steam user 023 or whatever. And so it's basically just a 3, an enum and error 3. And if you look at the comments here, it says Steam client appears to be out of date. It was definitely not out of date. We both made sure, he made it, Garbage Mule made sure independently that his Steam client was up to date. And I had just installed Steam, so I knew that it wasn't a problem. And I even went and said, okay, check for updates on Steam, and it was up to date. So we knew it was something else, and maybe this version mismatch. I think what had happened was it kind of gave me a hint. And that's, yeah, sorry, getting ahead of myself. So what I did is, once I kind of figured out, I just printed out this, I just created this if statement here to check that was truly what it was returning. And of course it was, and this would get printed out if we ran both Steam inits. So if we circle back to where I was originally from, originally talking about was the Steam init, and if you call another Steam init after we create our Steam multiplayer peer, initialize that, If you call that twice, you get that, Godot's user not found, Steam user 023, I think it was, and then you also, the return result is this enum here, which is 3. So version mismatch kind of threw a red flag up for me. So that, okay, could mean that your Steam version was mismatched, but it might also be a library problem. So I was like, well, maybe there's a version mismatch between the version that Godot Steam is built on, right? And you can go and look up and see their same action tab, like I was talking about a minute ago, their build stuff, and you can kind of see what they're using. And also maybe their build version of their Steam SDK version, I think it was 1.6.2 or whatever, was different from ours. And we went and did look into that, and I think it was different. I think it was 1.6.0 versus 1.6.2. So I ended up downloading the 1.6.2 after 1.6.0 I tested with, because I figured I downloaded 1.6.0 because that's what the the Steam multiplayer peers extension was built with, I believe, according to the GitHub continuous development deployment or whatever, continuous integration. And so then I just decided to check and rebuild the project with the 162 SDKs, public and redistributable bin. I can't say that word, which is, like I said a minute ago, these guys right here. So we just put in the new ones and built it, and still no luck. So that really didn't make, that I really thought that could have been something that, like, well, the Steam versions have to match, right? For the Steam to be able to be initted by two different extensions that are just happening to use the same library. Well, that wasn't the case. That didn't fix the problem. And before I get too ahead of myself, I actually went so far as to, if you look into this Steam SDK, the Steamworks example, that's the Space Wars example that everybody knows about. That's the Steam ID 480 that we all use in testing. So if we come over here and look, 480 is Space Wars. So I was like, well, does this Steam networking socket just work on a Mac? Is it totally broken on a Mac? Because if you pull open Steam, let me pull open Steam really quick and see. If you go open the Space Wars, it says your current Mac version is unable to run 32-bit games. Your game may not run. And if I hit play here, I don't think it does work. And I don't want to hit play because I don't want to mess anything up. But, this whole time, like, I'm thinking Space Wars doesn't work on a Mac. Well, I went ahead and opened that project, this Steamworks example API, because it basically exercises the entire catalog of the Steam APIs from Valve, from Steam. This is Steam proper, Valve proper, whatever you want to call them. This is their example, this C++ project right here. So this project represents everything basically that you can do with Steam, and you can see a ton of stuff here: leaderboard, P2P authentication, remote storage, whatever that means. All this stuff here is exercising Steam's APIs across the board. And what I was thinking is, I dug through the code here and I found this Steam network socket. Now, if this was null, then I knew it was a problem for Macs, and maybe there's some more fundamental issue that we have to get resolved. So I figured out how to put in a debug statement here, and I was like, if this debug statement gets hit, then it's very likely that this is not null, because this connect P2P would fail. And if it was null, we would have a bigger problem. And if it wasn't null, well, then it was something with our extensions. And I don't know the order of operations of how I figured all this, and exactly when I tried what, but at some point I grabbed this Space Wars example, and then I just went ahead and ran it just to see. And it actually worked. It actually worked great. Oh, it launched on my other screen here. Yeah, so here's the Space Wars example, and you can see there's a ton of stuff in here that that exercises Steam APIs. But if we just want to start a new server, connecting a server, okay, so it got me into a server, and here I am. Here's my little Space Wars ship. Look at the log right here. It did print bad 2. Bad 2 is right here. So that kind of told me that Steam networking sockets is working. So it isn't a Mac thing. We were able to run this game and connect to the Steam networks, and you can see I can shoot, I can move around. This is pretty cool. And we're able to exercise and see that I can, connect to the Steam Relay servers, and if somebody wanted to join, they could do that. And I think if I go to the menu you can check out that I can create a lobby. And so if you guys want to play, let me know. And you can find a lobby, and there's like a ton of other people testing on this game. I tried to join some of these, but I don't think it works that way. I think these people are just testing lobbies. I'm not really sure what's going on there. There's like leaderboard stuff. So here's all the top people that have scored in the top whatever, however they score the Space Wars game. So this is just a cool C++ level of exercising Steam APIs. So if you're interested in that, I don't know, maybe you would be, but I don't think you really need to get involved at this low level with when you're developing with Godot. You don't really need to do that. But I really wanted to prove that this Steam networking sockets wasn't null. So I went all the way down the rabbit hole and I hit the bottom, and this was where the bottom was. And once that I was able to run Steam's proper example of exercising their APIs, I knew that it wasn't a Mac problem and it was some other problem. So we can get rid of that, and hopefully we never have to do that again. It was actually kind of fun to run all that stuff and get it set up. But anyways, so coming all the way back from that, low point in the rabbit hole, I took a step back, and picking back up with this version mismatch, after proving that it wasn't a Mac issue, I thought that, well, maybe there's some kind of library clash. And I think Garbage Mule had the same realization around the same time, that maybe in our Godot project, running Steam init is actually trying to, if you run it twice, right? So we have Godot Steam plugin, and then here, I'll actually click it on the screen. So there's Godot Steam's extension with their packaged Steam APIs or SDKs or libraries or whatever you want to call it. And then also Steam multiplayer extension comes with the same library. When I say same, I just mean it may not be the exact same file, but it's providing the same API. So here's your Steam API driver. I'm going to just call it driver because I think everybody's familiar with that. It's like the Apple version of the drivers. So this is Steam Multiplayer Peers version under this Mac OS folder. And then there's like Windows drivers for their API. So this is the Windows version, and here's the Linux version, right? Well, here's the Mac version. This library, you just copy paste this from, where was it? I think this is where we grabbed it. Yeah, right here. So as part of that SDK, you're just grabbing this library file, and as part of this build, I think it's somewhere in this, I can't remember off the top of my head where this was, but yeah, Steamworks library path. Here's that library. I think this is part of that, and it grabs that executable. It can build your code with it, and as part of the distribution, the build artifacts, it gets packaged in this multiplayer peer extension, and it just gets set right next to the actual extension executables or libraries, whatever. So this extension is a GD extension. So you have to have a library build file for that. And these are just for different versions like debug or release. And then they're also doing a double precision, floating point precision versus single. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, so this specific file, just ignore everything else in here except for this file, which is the actual extension file, and then the Steam API file. But if we go over to Godot, so this is Steam Multiplayer Peers extension, but if we go over to Godot Steam's, same thing, they have their drivers for Windows, drivers for Linux, and drivers for the Mac, for Mac operating systems. And they have the same file. So what I think was happening, or what I guessed or hypothesized what was happening, is both extensions were trying to run this file, and there was a collision happening or a conflict or something. And I think that's where this weird error, this no Steam user 23, I really couldn't find much on this. And there were people out there talking about, hey, I got this weird error, I don't know what's going on, but nobody really identified. I think this is some low level kind of just catch-all return or something that Steam gives us in the bowels of the Steam SDK, and it kind of just propagated up, and I can't really do anything with that information. So that's why it was important to know about the version mismatch thing that we caught a minute ago right here. So that kind of led us to this. Okay, is there a conflict going on with running init Steam twice? and how do we resolve that conflict? Like how does this work on Windows in the first place? And then like that doesn't make any sense, right? Because Windows has their Windows drivers here, and then if on the Steam multiplayer they have the drivers here too, so it would be two of the same drivers. I don't still know the answer to that, and I still don't know the answer to why, you know, how to fix this in the editor on Mac. But I think what we decided was, what if we create a symlink from the Steam version of this Steam multiplayer peer extension version of this library, because it expects it to be there. So when you're running in the editor, if I delete this file or I just rename it or whatever, it crashes, right? So let me BAK for back up, and if I run this, yeah, look, Steam multiplayer doesn't exist because that extension relies, this is the extension file, this one right here, it relies on this being there. It wants it to be there, so it needs to be there to work. And you'll see if I run it again, it works fine. So it wants to be there, so we have to figure out a way to point, or I thought that, you know, because this was a collision, I didn't want to run both versions or of the same Steam. You know, it's probably trying to connect to Steam, it's probably got like a process ID, and it's probably identifying or finding on the Mac, hey, you can't have two of these things running. That's my guess. That was the current hypothesis. So in order to fix that, let's just go look over at this is kind of skipping ahead to yesterday, when I actually I created two workaround chunks, workaround for the editor and workaround for export builds, and I'll get to that in a second. But the workaround for the editor is just create a backup of that library really quick, so you don't lose it. And I'm gonna pull up a terminal for this. Let's see. I think, yeah, this is the wrong folder. This is the, yeah, I don't want to be in this folder. I want to be in, I think I want to be in this one. Yeah, so let's do that. Let me just move this over in the middle. Okay, so I don't think we need that one right now. All right, I don't know if anybody can see this because it's kind of small text, but so here's this library that we don't want to run twice. So let's just create a backup of it. So I'm gonna do move, and then let's just move it to, like I did a second ago, backup. Okay. Sorry, LATR is just force habit. So there's our backup file, and if I ran the project like you saw a second ago, it wouldn't run. But let's create a link from Steam multiplayer peers version of this to the Godot Steam version of it, and let's just see what that does. So if we look at the instructions that I posted yesterday for this workaround, we're already in the macOS folder, right? We're in the macOS folder. No, not that one, right here. So we're in the macOS folder. I'm going to minimize that, and let's just create this link, symlink. And I'm just going to copy this line, and it's white. All right, well, let me just run it. Okay, so what it's doing is ln-s is soft link, and then we're going to point to the library under Godot Steam. So here's Steam multiplayer peer. We're going from here, and we're going to point to here. So that's what we did, and it's, you know, it's where you want the pointer to point to, or the symlink to point to, and then the name that you want it to represent. So in theory, if we do call, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, the point is if this was initialized using the same file, Steam multiplayer peer, we don't have to call initialization, but the Steam multiplayer peer still seems that it wants that library to be next to it. Like it knows that Steam API library is sitting next to it, and it wants to use it. I think it's this one. No, this one right here. This one wants to, you know, identify that it wants that Steam APIs to be sitting right next to it. So if it accesses it, in theory, it should access the same driver that the Godot Steam one's using. So after creating this link, if we run it again, I think am I actually in the right project? SMP, yeah, I think so. So if I run this and I hit host, it actually works. And when we saw that was the first time that I saw create host and peer created, which is just a debug statement I added, if this was okay, meaning this create host function worked, then we can actually establish our multiplayer peer. This peer created. That's the first time I've ever seen that on a Mac. And that was yesterday, I think, or the day before that happened. So that was super exciting that we were able to, that was like the first time we were able to actually, sorry, I didn't even realize there's chat people. I'll talk to you guys in a second. Just kind of like running through this. That was the first time we were able to get the Steam multiplayer peer extension working on a Mac. So that was a really cool breakthrough. So if you are developing on a Mac, I don't know what the official solution or the official, final result of how the maintainers plan on solving this. Maybe they want me to create a pull request. I'm still waiting to hear back from the maintainers on this. But if you still want to develop on a Mac, this is a workaround. Just go over to the issue, and I'll probably link this in the stream, or maybe I'll upload another video and I'll put this issue in the description. But you can see right here, just go under the expressobits Steam multiplayer peer project and click on issues. And there's only 13, so you'll find it. It's just the create host one. And if you scroll down to my section, all the way at the bottom that I posted yesterday, just follow these instructions and you can start developing local on your machine. You still need another computer, right? You still need another computer to do Steam testing, but everybody knows that. So that's not the problem. So that was the first breakthrough we had. I don't know if that's going to be the end all be all solution. That is I want to say a great workaround. I spent hours trying to figure out how to get this to work in an editor without doing this symlink technique. You can see the symlink is right here. I don't know what else to say about it. I focused heavily on the GD extension. So we just open that with text edit. I spent a lot of time messing with these configurations for both plugins, and this dependency section's a little, it's a little sketchy, and I'll talk to that in a minute for let's do a build and when I get to the build section. But I couldn't figure it out. If you guys have a way to get this Steam multiplayer peer, now that I think we've identified kind of the root cause is like you can't init two Steams from the same project. And so then how do you tell two different executables or two different extensions that are trying to use the Steam APIs? How do you get them to work together on a Mac? It looks like we've kind of identified the root cause for why this was throwing exceptions. So it's because it wasn't initialized. And if you initialize two versions, they conflict. So you have to create a symlink so that they use the same version behind the scene. And at that point, you don't actually need to call the initialization function that we just made to test with. This actually isn't there, right? This is something that we made. So you don't really need to call this at all. This will just work with the symlink solution right there. If one of you guys are out there, maybe you have a lot more experience with how to get these editor builds to work with Steam multiplayer peer or Steam SDKs or sharing libraries, and not for builds, just for the editor. If you know how to get this working without doing this symlink technique, please let us know. I'm probably not going to work on this any longer at this point. Other than maybe trying to merge in some code to fix the build to exports, because I think that's actually pretty viable. But as far as the editor goes and anything beyond this, I gotta move on to other stuff. But I just want to get this out there so everybody's kind of aware where things are at, because I made this video a year ago about the Steam multiplayer peer, and I did have a lot of questions over the past year about like, hey, does this still work on a Mac or not, or is this still viable? Yes, it's viable. Games can be made with this. No, it wasn't working on a Mac, but now we have some workarounds. And anyways, so if you do have any possible or potential solutions, let me know, and I can take a stab, or just comment down below in this issue, and that would be greatly appreciated, and I'm sure the community would love that. So now we have a workaround for developing in the editor, and if you want to launch this here on your Mac, you can do that, and then you can connect to it from your Windows PC, and you can or another Mac, I guess, and now you can test out Steam as you would normally. I think I have this project, which is the original project that I made with this, And let me see if it's working. I don't know if I added this was that Brackeys one that I turned into multiplayer, and then I did like several videos on it, and I did like one on how to make multiplayer, how to make lag compensation, and how to use Steam Multiplayer Peer, and how to use the precompiled Steam Multiplayer Peer Godot version and all that stuff. So if I hit host, yeah, so this, I actually already fixed this. So I created a symlink in here. I believe if I go and say open file manager, I don't want to, yep, I already created a symlink. So I just applied the same workaround that I just showed you guys a second ago to this one, to this project. And now this was the first time I've ever been able to see this. And that was really exciting. I just want to play this. I don't really, all right, I'm just going to do this for an hour. You guys can just hang out. All right, let me check the chat really quick because I'm kind of neglecting that. What are you guys saying? Wouldn't it be better to merge Godot, Steam, C multiplayer, C++ extension into one extension that depends on a single? Yeah, you know, you would think that that would be a good idea. I don't have any sway over that. I would say it sounds like that would sound like a direct approach to fixing the problem, but the issue is that Godot Steam is handling a different view. Godot Steam is just Steam API wrapper, and Steam Multiplayer Peer is a separate column of problems. So to me, it doesn't feel right to merge them into one project. I like how technically you don't need Godot Steam, but in theory at this point, who are we kidding? Like, you're gonna have to depend on Godot Steam. You know, they're already maintaining a special compiled version of this plugin that doesn't use the sockets. I think they use some other form of the Steam's relay. I don't want to talk to that too much because it's been like a year since I looked at that, so I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense, but I don't think it makes sense as far as like what the two projects are trying to do. So I think that there's going to be a lot of pushback on trying to do that, and I don't even know if I would agree with that. I think that they should remain separately. It's not like everybody that's using Steam wants to pull down Steam Multiplayer Peer. I'm not 100% sure what to say on that, but yeah, I don't think I would necessarily agree with that, and I don't think that they should be merged in. You know, this is like kind of handling more. This is like allowing you to use these Godot's high-level multiplayer APIs without having to swap out your implementation for those multiplayer functions like, you know, synchronizer, RPCs, etc., spawners, and all that. So Godot Steam is just giving you the APIs to Steam to do whatever you want with. So yeah, I don't know if I don't think they're going to do that, and I don't know if I would agree with like that's a good idea just based on those two different contexts or two different problems they're trying to solve there. So yeah, I don't know. And then what else do you guys say? You like multiplayer? Great, I like it too. Steam does know if you have two clients running on the same machine. Knows it's historically hard to test things due to this, so I think your theory is plausible. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely think that there is that, you know, I don't even think you can run two Steam games at the same time. I think we were talking about that the other day. So yeah, I think that this is definitely the problem. Like, we've definitely kind of, I'm just saying definitely a lot, but we've for sure narrowed down that it is trying to run that library at the same time. There is a small chance that I am actually wrong and it's something else, but as far as I can tell, it's just, you just can't run that API, that SDK library twice from one project. So we're not done though. We have another thing to talk about. Let's close this game. Look at all that stuff I got open. All right. So that's how to get it to work in the editor. However, what if you want to do a build? So we spent another day looking into build stuff. So we figured out this link problem, we figured out you can't run the two Steam API drivers. You can't run it twice. But what about a build? So let's look at a build really quick. I think I have this folder here. Okay, so I'm going to do a build of my demo project. Let's go over to project, export, and let's drag this guy over. and we'll select this, and I already set it up. And the only thing you have to do is, you know, you add and you select Mac OS and make sure it's the runnable one. And the only thing you have to add is the bundle identifier. So I just like added something random. I don't even like what that is called, but whatever. So if you export project, I'm gonna leave everything default, export with debug, save that. Oh, it's actually gonna work. So I should probably, no, it's not gonna work. Right, I just did the symlink. So the symlink has nothing to do with the build. And if we go look at the build, here's our DMG that gets created. I'm gonna just open it up and drop it in there. And to run this, I like to double click on this command. So it opens a terminal window, and then it pops open our little example demo project that we're using to investigate this problem. If we click host, oh, it actually worked. So I guess I do have the fix in already. All right, so it did work. You could see peer created, and that's what we want to see. So let me break it so that you guys can see how to fix that. Where is that? Let's go back to the documentation. That's why I document it. All right, so what we should do here to fix the demo projects is you got to open up your GD extension for Godot Steam. So let's go under, not Steam Multiplayer Peer, but Godot Steam. And let's find that really quick. I'm going to open it with a text editor. Let's kill that. And there we go. It's probably really hard to see. Oh, now everybody can see it. See it from space. All right, so yeah, okay. So when you download this file, when you download this plugin, let me repeat that. When you download this plugin, it looks like this. This is what it looks like. And if we do a build, let's just do another build. Export. Oh, let me just delete the files in there that I added, just so everybody's, I don't know why it beeped at me. So let's save it. Takes a minute for some reason. So let's open that and let's run that and see what happens. I can run it from here, but I just like doing it this way. All right, so it pops open a terminal and it pops open the window. And here, if we run host, there's our infamous Steam networking sockets is null from our C++ code way back here that we added. That line of code wasn't there, I actually added just for this. But yeah, that's what that is. So error creating host, there's our host 2 again. So just when you think everything was working, you tried to do a build and it still doesn't work. So how do we fix that? Well, what we've come up with for now, let me just get out of this, is I'll just delete everything in here so we don't have to deal with that. So what we've come up with is if you go to the GD extension for Godot Steam, if I look at my instructions for the Mac debug or release, depending on what you're trying to build, you need to change this first line. Let's get some context, guys. Hold on. Let's get some context. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Okay, so Godot Steam OS X. So here's our GD extension that we're looking at right here. And if we go to OS X folder, this is where it gets a little confusing, I would say. We have this library twice. That's the first strange thing. When you do a build in this distribution folder, which I just deleted, let me see if I can pull it back up. We can figure out what was actually created under this. Sorry, I did that really quick. So if we click on the build artifact, the executable, show package contents, it's going to show us our build artifacts. Here's our executable that actually runs. But if we look under this frameworks folder, you'll notice that it copies over the Steam Multiplayer Peer driver. Great. It copies over the libsteam APIs, which I don't know if that's from Steam Multiplayer Peer or from Godot Steam. I don't think I ever proved which one was copying that over. I know I can. I don't think it's really important though. However, I mean, eventually we'll need to figure it out. But if you click on this is from Godot Steam. Here's another version of that Steam API, and then the actual Godot Steam executable. I guess we'll call it driver, library, whatever. So this is the Godot Steam APIs, and this is Steam proper libraries. So I looked at this and was thinking that, well, if this is the build artifacts for when you create a build, we have two Steam APIs again. So we have kind of the same problem. So I wasn't exactly sure how to fix this setup, but all I did was I took this and I dragged it over here and I ran the project again and it worked. So I was like, well, how do we get this plugin here? Or, I'm sorry, how do we get the plugin's executable at the same level as the Steam API driver that it needs, and the multiplayer peer can be at the same level of the Steam driver? And that kind of felt like that would solve that problem. Again, this is not coming from an official source. I'm just trying to figure out how to get a build to work. So if we go back over to the issues instructions I'm talking about, we need to edit this GD extension file for Godot Steam and just tack on this part right here. You can actually just copy this whole thing and copy paste it in here, or we can just tack on the part that I want. So what I'm doing here is, if we check okay, this is inside the build, but I don't want to look in the build. I want to look in I don't need that anymore. Okay, so this is the Godot project. This is the Godot Steam extension inside the Godot project. So right here, we're just looking at the files of that. What I'm trying to do with this GD extension is as I say, use this guy. This is, so I guess the way that these GD extensions work, I should back up. I'm all over the place because there's a lot going on here, but it's just a stream, so whatever. The Mac OS debug, let's just assume that that's the one we're going to use, because that's the default. Like, let's just build for debug. I think that's the default setting for Godot builds. And what this library does is it wants you to point to the executable of the extension so that the build knows where to get the executable so it can package it up. So that said, I was like, well, this folder, right? So this wasn't here. This folder is not the executable. It's a folder. If you notice, everything else is pointing to actual driver. So I was like, well, what if we point to the actual executable, which is this guy? What would that do? So we just added that line there. And if we do another build, which I need to find again, let me go back. This is where our build is going to be output, this dist folder. So let's just delete our previous build. So we made this change in the Godot project, right? This has nothing to do with C++ or anything. We're just in our Godot project. We make this small change here. We go back to our Godot project, and let's just build one more time. All right, so we got that built. And if we go look at the results of the build, I love copying it over. And we inspect the package contents. Look at that. All of a sudden, they're all at the same level. So this is Godot Steam's executable. This is Steam Multiplayer Peer's executable. And this is the Steam API driver that they both want. And they both kind of want it to be next to them. I don't really see that that's configured anywhere. That just seems, maybe this is built as part of the C++ process. I wasn't able to narrow that down 100%, but they both seem to want it to be next to each other. And you might be thinking, well, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just take this dependency? Again, I'm switching gears really quick. Why wouldn't you just tell this dependency to point to the same one? Because you know what your builds, okay, what does that mean? Let me back up. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Here is Steam Multiplayer Peers. Nobody can read it. Okay, here is Steam Multiplayer Peers GD extension file. You might be thinking, well, instead, why bother with Godot Steam why not just point your dependency for Mac OS to the same one, right? I thought of that. I said, well, let's just grab this, and instead of messing with Godot Steam, let's just paste that here. And then in theory, what this dependencies is supposed to do, if you go over to the Godot documentation somewhere, maybe I closed it. I don't think I closed it. Where is it? I can't believe I closed it. Oh, here. So that was the library section. And if you scroll down to what dependencies are supposed to be doing, it's saying that it will copy over whatever dependency you provide. So if this is our build, Mac OS debug, forget about all this other stuff. It will take this framework file and copy it over to wherever you tell it to go for the build, which is default. This contents framework, this warning here says you must put contents frameworks, which is contents frameworks, right? You must put that or else it won't work. I don't think that's true. I think it still defaults to the same spot. I got this to work without having to hard code contents frameworks. It should copy it over to that. So I was like, well, if I just, instead of copying the library from the Steam multiplayer peer extension, this guy, instead of copying this guy, why don't I just point to the same one here as the one that GD extension, Godot Steam is using right here? Why don't I do that? Well, I don't know, because it doesn't work. I tried this. It doesn't care. It might copy that file over there into the build artifacts area, but it doesn't work. It doesn't fix the problem. The only way that I found to get it to work was with this little line here that says, actually, don't create a folder. This is basically saying don't create a folder and just bring over the executable. And of course, you can see here with their dependency, they're relying on their folder or their plugins version of the library, but they're not relying on this library. So I think Godot Steam's Mac stuff might need a little bit of I think it needs to get revisited, because if I pull this down right here so everybody can see the context, add-ons Godot Steam OS X. So we're on add-ons Godot Steam OS X. That's this library. That's not this library. So okay, I think that they should adjust these GD extension files, and I'm not an expert on this. Maybe they have a better intuition about how this is supposed to work, but I don't think these folders are necessary. I think we can just change these GD extensions to generate it like this, in without any nested structures or anything. Because if you do that, the build works. So this is actually a build. So here's our Godot Steam executable now. This is from a build, so we're just adding this little line here, adding this, or this tacked on, pointing to the actual executable of the extension. By doing that, it packages them into the exact same top level frameworks folder, and they're all happy. And here's the Steam API, and here's the Steam multiplayer peer API. So they both are going to reference this. They both want that Steam driver to be next to it. So let's go ahead and run that and make sure that it works. I'm going to just run the terminal version, pull it over here, and we hit host, and look at that, peer created. That's what we want to see. That's how we know this is working. Am I in the right project? No. That is here. Right here, we know create host works because we got to peer created. No exceptions are thrown. So now we have a workaround for both builds and for running in the editor. I'm going to just close that build for now. So just by adding this little bit here to the end of the GD extensions library part, yeah. So I think they can. I'm speculating, but I believe they can just edit their GD extension, this Godot Steam, edit their Godot Steam's GD extension file to not have this kind of nested setup. Maybe they did that for a reason. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe the build process has changed, because if you look, we're not even using the same executable type. This is some like framework thing, and Steam multiplayer peer is using these library files instead, these guys right here. So maybe there was something to that back in the day or previous, I don't know, but I don't think we need to do this. I think we can just and I would like to be proven wrong here if there is an issue with that, and we're still waiting on the maintainers to kind of give us a heads up on this kind of stuff, as we just figured this out like yesterday, and I just posted the workarounds. So yeah, I think with a simple tweak to their GD extension file, we eliminate this nested folder problem. We eliminate duplicate libraries. I'm not sure why these libraries are here. And we resolve this build problem because they'll be all in the same spot. Package contents, framework, here they are. And yeah, and it works. I think that's like kind of the majority of what I wanted to talk about today. Those are the 2 workarounds. If you guys check out the issue for this, I'll try to link it somewhere. That was it for the build, and I kind of talk you through for the workaround for the editor here, and then the workaround for the builds. Please try this out if you're a Mac person, if you're a Mac developer and you like doing this stuff on a Mac. Try it out and let me know. Maybe give me a thumbs up if it worked for you, or just reply to this, and because the more people that are like verifying this, the better, because some of these developers don't have Macs. So if you got a Mac and you're working with Steam multiplayer peer, please let me know. And let's do like an end-to-end test so you guys know I'm not making this stuff up. Let's go use Steam. I don't want to do build. Let's just keep it here. And let me just restart that. So I think I have the fix already on this project locally. I'm not going to push this fix out because that would mess up the repository stuff, but let me just make sure. Yeah, so I don't have the fix for the build. Yeah, so I'm not going to do a build. I'm just going to run in the editor for now, because I think I have the symlink set up. Yeah, I can see the little, that I don't know if you guys probably can't see this on stream, but there's a little arrow there, and that means symlink. So we got a symlink, so it should work in the editor. And I don't need 2 running because you can't run 2 on the same computer. So let's host a P2P game. And now we're running. You can see that I'm here. And again, this has no lag compensation. This is like bare minimum project. And if you want to know which project I'm talking about, it is so Battery Acid, Godot Steam multiplayer peer extension. I just pushed out an update earlier today and updated it to 4.4. So this should work on 4.4 if you pull this down and apply the workaround. This project does not have the workarounds. You still have to apply them manually. I didn't want to do that because I don't know if it's going to be an official solution or not. But let's make sure that this works. Let me go on my Windows PC really quick. It's booting up. It'll be just a second. It's not booting up, it's waking up. All right, so I'm gonna run it over here. Use Steam, list lobbies. All right, so it should show in, should drop in. Yeah, you can kind of see my name is over there. So that's my other Steam user, and I'll hit spacebar so you can see. Yeah, look, I'm not cheesing anything. It's for real. He can move. And that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yay! Cool. So you can now work on your Mac with Steam multiplayer peer and test. I mean, you still have to have 2 computers, but yeah, this pretty much proves that this is working. Again, these are workarounds. I don't know what the official solution is going to be for this. Check out the issue, and I'll have that I'll try to link that below. If you guys have any questions or comments about that, please go to the issue or drop by the Discord and let me know. I was just super excited that I was able to get this kind of worked out with help from Garbage Mule. So big shout out to you. Thank you a ton for kind of being kind of there the whole time and being able to bounce ideas off each other. That was really super helpful. So yeah, keep us, I'm going to try to keep everybody posted, and let me know again if you have any issues or anything. I'm going to log off for today. I'm pretty tired of it. I've been working on this for like 4 days straight. So yeah. And once we get a more official solution, I'll either do another video or I'll do another stream and keep you guys informed. All right, thanks for stopping by today, everybody. We'll see you next time.